Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're continuing our discussion on how to train a Friesian horse with Orion. So starting out here on the lunge line, just showing you here on the lunge how nicely and consistent he's gotten into that stretch now. Now once again, we're about in our third month of training with this horse, from a totally green horse who just barely learned how to lunge to what we're seeing here now. Look how beautifully he's floating over the ground. Look how light on his feet he looks. When we started this horse, this is a very big horse, as most Friesians are. He was quite heavy and had that really clunky look about him because he was so disengaged. But now we look at him, he looks light on his feet. He's lifting himself up quite nicely. Stretching over his back, deep into that stretch. And that's what we're looking for. So in the last few weeks, we've begun the mounted process with this horse. We've gotten him as far as walking on the lunge line. And today we'll take it that next step farther of seeing him trotting on the lunge line with the rider on his back for the very first time. So this is what I would be looking for before I attempt to get on a horse, is that kind of consistent work into the stretch. Horse has accepted contact with the bridle. That means it's ready to be mounted. So here we've gone ahead and gotten on. He has given us no problem whatsoever. We've taken it nice and slowly with this horse, bringing him up to here. We spent quite a few days just walking him, with me walking her, as I showed you. Now we've progressed to the point where she's riding the horse around the circle around me on the lunge line in the walk, which we got to on our last exercise. And today we're going to try a little trot work when we get to that point. So Amber has begun to take over more control from me. So because the horse already understood what it meant to move forward from the whip and into the bridle, is an easy thing to put a rider up there and achieve the exact same thing. That is, if the horse is strong enough to carry the weight of the rider, which of course we see with this horse that he is. But even with this horse, if you look behind the saddle there, you see there's still a little bit of a dip there. So his back was already, as young as he was, starting to drop by virtue of the fact of his weight. So why this work is so important for these horses at this level, to get over their backs so they develop correctly and we don't get that sway back look in a young horse. We see far too many horses at 5 or 6 years old today that already look sway back. So we'll see over the next few months how that dip there behind the saddle will completely fill up and go away. And he will become flat across his loins, which is what we're looking for. So he's coming along really beautifully. So again, you can see that I'm doing very little here now. Amber is basically taking over control. I'm just there so at this point, so the horse associates what we've already done with what we're doing now. In other words, he has confidence in the lunging, so he's going to have confidence with her up there, rather than if I just turned her loose and sent her around and said, go ride the horse. So again, so many people get injured and horses get injured by trying to do too much with young horses too soon. Even if they feel like they're calm in the ring, doesn't mean that they're ready to go out on trail ride and have a dog run up underneath them or a car or something like this spook them. So we always want to be sure that we have young horses well in the contact and accepting the bridle and accepting the aids before we start encountering obstacles that we may create a real problem in the horse if we can't get the horse through that obstacle. An obstacle being anything that could be in the way, even a puddle of water or a stream or a lot of car noise or whatever the case may be. So look how he's beginning to stretch beautifully into this walk. And that's what I would want before I go to the trot. I'd want to be sure, like in all things, I have the walk work right before I go on to the trot work. So I'm quite happy with this. He's a very good boy. So here, before we start the trot work, I just have her practice halts a couple of times just to be sure we still have the brakes on. It's always that first step with a rider on their back from the walk to the trot that's the most dangerous, so to speak, because very often horses will seem quite calm about them, and then just moving into a trot disrupts them so much, and is so all of a sudden the rider is rising to the trot, this sort of thing. So everything changes. So this could be the most dangerous point, is that point of moving the horse up from the walk into the trot. Some horses want to be quite explosive when we do that. So we want to be sure that we've done plenty of that walk work and that we've done plenty of the lunging work to be sure the horse is ahead of the leg, which is the whip in this case, and accepting contact with the bridle. And here he moves off in the first trot with the rider on his back. You can see how he's a little uncomfortable there. Let him come back to a walk, but it wasn't explosive, so that was really well done. And we'll try that again. So you can immediately see how his back kind of hollows when he starts that trot. But this time it goes better. Legs begin to move more correctly. Begins to swing underneath a little bit. But you can see that even for a horse of this size, that's a difficult thing to make that transition. So we just come back to the walk, reestablish the stretch again, just like we would if we were just mounted and we weren't on the lunge line. We'd do the exact same thing. If we ran into a difficulty in the trot, we'd come back to the walk. If we run into a difficulty with the canter, we're going to come back to the trot. Don't keep doing something that seems difficult for the horse when the horse is struggling. Come back and reestablish what came before it, rather than trying to push through the wall of the difficulty. This is the most important thing that a real rider understands, that we can't force a horse to do anything that really has much real value in the long run. But once again, we move him up into the trot again. This time she sits a little bit just to get him stabilized a little bit before she starts rising to the trot. And this goes much better. Now he begins to swing much better underneath with the hind leg, so he's beginning to understand. And you can see him already there beginning to search for the stretch. Exactly what I'm looking for. That's really good. Now notice as he stretches down how the hind legs begin to swing through again. Again, this is the very first time anyone's ever trotted on this horse's back. So that was really quite good. Now we'll come back to the walk again. You can still see him struggling quite a bit with that trot, with the weight on his back, but getting better that time. So once again, just a small period of time doing that. Now we come right back to the walk again and reestablish the correct walk. How beautifully he's starting to stretch down. So again, this is only a couple of months into training. This horse has already learned to stretch into the contact. So again, this horse is 3.5, coming 4 years old. And once again, just showing you how easy it is to train young horses once you understand these basic principles. This time the rising trot goes a little better. Still a little high-headed for what we like, though, but he's beginning to get the idea. Much better there as he begins to seek the contact. There, that's what we're looking for. Now notice how as soon as he gets there, all of a sudden the trot looks like it did before we put the rider on. Remember, that's always our goal in all the work that we do, is to bring a horse to a training level that enables him to not be interfered with by the weight of a rider. That's the whole point of strengthening the horse's back, so we can give the horse back that mobility, all that movement with the weight on his back. So once again, we're just back in the walk again, and we start the trot again. Now this time he almost immediately goes down in the stretch, which is exactly what I'm looking for. So you see how that uncomfortableness is now gone. As soon as he gets into the stretch, all of a sudden the trot becomes rhythmic. His hind legs are able to continue tracking up under his body. Absolutely beautiful. And then back to the walk again. So that was a big improvement that time. And once again, we just come back to the stretch in the walk, reestablishing that forward stretch. And we'll just do this in one direction today. So that was really good. He got to the point where he stretched all the way down into that contact for his first time with a rider on his back. And we're going to stop right there. Exactly what I was looking for. This is Will Faerber with my associate trainer Amber Matusik and Orion, the young Friesian. Very good boy today. We'll see you next time.